Okay, and welcome to the Dragon Athletic Effort is Everything podcast. Today, we got a little bit of a change in pace. We've got a guest in. We've got one of our longest serving members, Dr Rini Chatterjee. Dr Rini Chatterjee?
Chatterjee, yeah, that's it.
Not many people know I got an actual stutter, so sometimes I trip up on it.
I did not know that.
There we are. I thought it was really interesting to bring Rini in because having been with us for 10 years, obviously you've gone through a change over that time from being someone that didn't really do any training whatsoever, so or limited training because of how busy your work is and your career was, into now possibly looking at changing or just changing the direction of where you're heading with fitness. Is that fair to say? Or just trying to help people get healthier in a slightly different direction? Or
yeah, I think it's fair to say that CrossFit, which I discovered about 10 years ago, has really sort of changed my outlook on first of all myself, and then what people potentially need for sort of in the health space rather than just in the fitness space.
Yeah.
And you're right, I did exercise before CrossFit, but it was all, running around on a cross trainer, essentially trying to burn calories so I could eat donuts.
Okay.
Or, eat the things that I knew weren't very good for me. So I thought if I go and do 20 minutes on a cross trainer, that'll work.
Yeah.
Had no idea at all, even as a medic, of the benefits of exercise. I thought it was all about weight management. And look, now we know that there are huge benefits to exercise. And least of all, weight management, I would suggest. So that funny adductor machine. Didn't even know what I was capable of, Andy. I had no idea what a deadlift was or the fact that I could do that, those 10 pounds on that machine. And I was like, oh yeah, this is good.
Do you think people perceive medics in general then, just to know about, because obviously you work with people on their health, that there is an assumption that, a doctor knows how to look after that one themselves, they understand how to make someone healthier, or is it just a question of, yeah, you do, but it's more from a diseased or a sickness point of view? Is that a fair reflection in terms of just general pop?
I think that medicine has become something that firefights illness. I think you're right. The NHS wasn't probably not set up to firefight disease when it was, all those many years ago. And I think that people don't correlate sort of fitness and nutrition with their doctors anymore. We're all succumbed to our environments to some degree and the stress that we feel. The misinformation that we get from food companies about what's healthy or not. Even if you follow sort of the nutrition and fitness space on Twitter, there's just arguments all the time, keto versus high carb, and nobody really knows what's real and what's not real. Food guidelines have been set up by kind of tragic epidemiological information. We know that epidemiology is good to provide a question for answers to come from, but basically not really for guidelines for food to be made up from. And all of this stuff has sort of resulted in a real epidemic of chronic disease, which we're all sitting amongst at the moment.
Yeah.
And in my day-to-day job, I spend a lot of time dealing with symptoms. And as an expert generalist, I didn't think that was what was going to be my job. I wanted to be helping people to understand how they could manage their own bodies and prevent disease. And that's why I set up a company called Resilience Health to try and sort of see it from that angle. But yeah, I don't know. I think my patients are surprised when I get on the floor and teach them how to get back up again.
Do a burpee.
Yeah.
But that's taken 10 years of, as I said, training for you in order to not to figure it out, but just to maybe just change the viewpoint on it. So what brought you in through the doors of Dragon all those years ago? So
I was at a 50th birthday party and I met two of your long-standing members, and they told me about this epic way to exercise where you could do gymnastics and weight training and everything was different every week. So I plucked up, the courage to walk in through the doors on Curran Road, and I found something that I could be consistent at.
Oh, cool.
And also, with time, I saw sort of tangible changes, which I'd never, ever seen before. I'd been on so many diets when I walked in through those doors, I think I was about 11 and a half stone, had no idea about fat mass and muscle mass or what I was capable of. I remember trying to do a bear crawl. Oh, Andy, couldn't do a 20-meter bear crawl. And that's when I thought, wow, there's something missing here. All of that sort of
movement
isn't doing anything. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I mean, what I personally believe, CrossFit has really helped and speed up is a kind of mentorship coaching. So the fitness industry for a long time, there was people involved within, maybe, the bodybuilding fraternity, helping people, get ready, stage ready and all that kind of stuff. But, bodybuilding and as a hobby isn't necessarily the healthiest of endeavors. You do look great, and obviously in bits and pieces. The training that goes along with it is pretty good, but it's for a certain purpose of trying to put on as much muscle mass as physically possible. However, when something like CrossFit came there, what I mean by the coaching element is that you have to be led by people, and then you have to buy into the people that are teaching you, and they have to live it and all that kind of stuff. And that's why it's had such a profound effect for someone such as you said, you went to the gym, occasionally, you were trying your best, you were putting in your efforts, but you weren't necessarily seeing the rewards from that. But whereas, CrossFit training, constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity, efforts are generally rewarded.
Yep.
Whether that's instantaneous in terms of, if you put all your effort into a workout, you're going to feel you feel both, but you feel knackered, but you've worked out, and then you feel great afterwards because you get that massive endorphin hit. And so it's just, it does become, a good route for helping people stay consistent with their training.
Exactly. And it gives a degree of accountability, doesn't it? You turn up for other people as well. And if you've got a coach that you really get on with, you turn up for them. Sometimes, look, we're told we should do everything for ourselves, but sometimes the motivation comes from external factors, doesn't it? Yeah.
And so over that time of that 10 years, I mean, obviously you've been continuing within your role within general practice. With your general practice, are you in a particular area where you might have some specialization, or is it... are you just seeing a complete plethora of different ailments all the time?
So day-to-day general practice is whatever walks in through the door or whatever's happening on the phone at the moment, right? So we are
you did 10 years of med school to go on, to be on the phones.
Yeah. I mean, I try and video call people sometimes if I want to be able to see their faces.
Do they put blurry backgrounds on?
They don't. No.
Yeah, it was weird. I watched on the Zoom. I watched this council video, and they all had like blurry backgrounds. Like the ones where it's like, or even a postcard one. Yeah. And I'm just used to watching our guys on the home workouts in their living room, crushing it, sweating, kids running around, dogs running around, and it's just like almost chalk and cheese. So you try and do that with your patients as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's helpful to see people's faces,
massively.
Right? But you have to do whatever comes in through the door, and we're really, really, really good at doing that. I do have a special area of interest, which did develop after I started CrossFit, which is metabolic health.
Yep.
I think metabolic health really underpins the main buckets of chronic disease, as Greg Glassman put it.
So for someone such as myself who needs to be walked through what metabolic health is, give us a little bit of an overarching viewpoint on that.
Okay, so that's a tough question to answer. I don't have a snapshot of that, really.
Give me the Rini definition.
So when we think about what we suffer with as we get older, or what takes us in the end, there tends to be a main few things. So cancer,
Yep.
metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
neurodegenerative diseases like
Yeah.
dementia. They all seem to be underpinned by our ability to manage our energy systems.
So mitochondrial function at the cellular
At a cellular level, yeah. So how we manage our glucose levels, how much insulin we shipping around to sort of keep those things under control, our lipid, our cholesterol sort of management. And all of those things seem to be foundations for all of those chronic illnesses. So the longer we can keep those at bay, the more likely we're going to live longer lives, but also happier and healthier lives where we can, there's no point. We're really good at the NHS at keeping people alive.
Yeah.
We're really good at it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. However, there are lots of people who are dying at 90, having not been able to walk since they were 60 because of their osteoarthritis.
Yeah.
Or just cannot enjoy life with their children or grandchildren because they can't walk up a flight of
It's
stairs.
all about thriving, and I think that's one of the longer term things in terms of what we can. You are right. We're in a technological state where pharmacology can keep us around for a bit longer. Treatment and etc. But it's not exactly people aren't thriving, and the biggest one that I saw with that, just as a sort of a reference point for me, and what you're saying is that when my dad got taken in ill with atrial fibrillation, causes of that were high stress job, drinking pre-wads before he was training. He's in his 50s, drinking quite heavily at night just because it takes the edge off of the stress, okay? And he had a resting heart rate of 140. When we went onto the cardiac or the cardiac ward, there were 75-year-old men there, bedridden, pissing their pants, all this kind of stuff. And my dad was 20 years their junior. So it was a bit of it was the first time I'd been able to experience everything I've been learning about, but you can see it firsthand. So, I mean, I'm assuming, you get to see that quite often. And then in terms of that metabolic derangement, that's one. But what I'm trying to say is that those people in there they weren't the healthiest of individuals. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean about firefighting illness. I'm trying to just manage people's symptoms. And movement's important because I think your dad has always moved, right?
Yeah.
But also important is nutrition and sleep.
Yeah.
And really, really important. I mean, the biggest cause of all-cause mortality is loneliness.
Yeah, okay.
Connection.
Yeah.
So important.
So how do they quantify that?
I mean, I think there's I forget who did the study. I don't know, I'll have to reread it.
Yeah.
But I read it at one time and it seemed sort of like
it makes sense though, because
everyone
everyone goes down on a bit of a downward spiral, A lot of what I would say is that sometimes I find some people like to have their own company. So it's like sometimes trying to break some glass, Come on, let's
But
go
people
out.
like in their own company, being an introvert is really different to being lonely, right? If you're lonely, that really affects your stress levels. It probably affects how you eat. You probably don't get motivated to exercise. You don't sleep very well. And there you are. You have all these issues.
So, were you aware of all these things and all this kind of stuff prior to, I'll say CrossFit training, but, obviously joining Dragon? Was this something where, there was like a light bulb moment, or just through, what I should say is that, Rini has attended the CrossFit Level 1 for medical professionals, the MD, travelled all the way to San Diego, or...
I went to CrossFit headquarters.
Headquarters, and it was in
Scotts Valley, California.
California, right? So lovely little trip there away.
Yeah, it was
do training in the sun's very different to a wet and cold Cardiff
with
afternoon.
Dave Castro just walking past.
Just mic dropping a couple of names there like that. You tell me, but where was it on that journey where you went, shit, some of the stuff I've been doing, and this kind of makes sense. How do I make this big of a change for my clients?
So, as in many of these sort of personal journey, it started off as a personal journey for me. So, despite exercising regularly, I didn't get my nutrition on point. I didn't know anything about sleep, but I started to learn from listening to sort of expert podcasts and things like that. I had experienced quite a significant episode of depression where I had to give up my job. And actually that was a big stimulus for me for change. And following on from that, I realized that there were other things that I could be doing to change stuff. So it started off as a personal thing. And then look, personal journeys, they're really hard to sort of get other people to relate to those things. And just because something works for you doesn't mean it works for somebody else. But, you know, these things that I keep banging on about, nutrition, movement, connection, sleep, they are foundations for health. And I just don't get to do that every day. In practice, I don't have time. But I really believe that we got to find time for it because at the moment, the NHS is not capable of providing what it really needs to, which is that root cause prevention of chronic disease.
Well, you're skirting on the viewpoint I have on it, and obviously that the NHS just cannot keep up with demand, and demand, unfortunately, is, it's everyone else. It's everyone that's out there, and you guys are fighting a fire. And as far as I'm aware, is that a lot of these things, and I know the information, that I've looked into, can talk about, the numbers in terms of the financial burden certain things or metabolic disease has on the NHS, and that money could be better spent elsewhere within the NHS, so we talk about it on the level ones. So it's like 10% of the whole NHS budget goes to the treatment of diabetes. Okay, in the NHS, which is something like 14 billion, something like that. Okay, and out of that 14 billion, 900,000, probably 0.9 of a billion goes to the treatment and the secondary care of type 1, which unfortunately is not preventable. Okay, you develop it, and the remainder of that money, so the 89% or whatever it is, goes to something which is purely preventable through diet and lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that number, again, you might not know it, but firsthand, is that from being at the coal face, in regards to general practice, is that fair? Are those the large amounts of issues that you see in general practice, non-emergency, around that kind of thing in terms of, this person's got type 2 diabetes? Yes, no?
I mean, there is a significant percentage of my population who have those illnesses, yeah. So the chronic management of disease that we do in primary care is based on, ischemic heart disease and type 2 diabetes. And usually those two things go together. Atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is something that we develop through age. Yeah. We're all going to have it. You're going to have it. I'm going to have it. The whole point is that we develop it or have symptoms from it really late in life or never.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, type 2 diabetes is one of those things that is entirely preventable, but underpins that disease process. Interesting thing about type 2 diabetes is that I've got postgraduate qualifications in diabetes, and nobody really ever suggested that it was preventable or reversible.
Right, okay.
And it is preventable and reversible. And I, even though I've only got 10 minutes with my patients, spend a lot of time talking about the foundations of health because I believe we can reverse some of these things. And it's tough. It's an uphill battle.
Metformin's easier though, isn't it?
Metformin.
So that's just a drug to regulate blood sugar level? Or?
So metformin is probably the best drug in type 2 diabetes because what it does is it limits your liver's ability to make extra glucose, essentially. So rather than making you wee out glucose or whatever. So metformin is the best of a bad bunch of drugs. And in fact, I think metformin's being used in loads of trials now with regards to life extension and stuff.
Longevity for
probably not good for the CrossFit community because there's some evidence that it really affects. It works on complex 2 of mitochondria, and it can sort of impact some of the benefit you get from exercise, I think. So I don't know. You're a bit of a self-experimenter. I don't know if you've got hold of any metformin.
I've not got a hold of my metformin. I've not really looked into it, and the reason being is that I just think it's just that one step too far for me at this moment in time. Yeah. Maybe in my 50s, I'll start to have a look at it, and I'm certainly with that. I'm not maximising my opportunities with more simpler nutritional methods.
Absolutely.
So I tend to deviate away with these certain things in terms of like having a chat about, like, so metformin, basically, that's like, am I right in saying that's the number one prescribed line of action that they do?
It's the starting. It's generally the starting drug, because it's quite safe and it doesn't cause sort of blood sugars to drop. But increasingly, people are on insulin now.
Right. Okay.
And the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes, you don't make insulin. Yeah. You have to inject it, and you need insulin to do lots of things, which you could go into if you want, but we don't have to. Type 2 diabetes should be called hyperinsulinemia. It's a disease of high insulin levels, not high. Yeah. And high blood sugar levels are a side effect of that. So we're giving people with super high insulin levels, the insulin is ineffective, it's not doing the job it should do, and we're giving them more. We've lost. Yeah. When we're giving type 2 diabetics insulin, we've lost. We're managing, it's like people with pneumonia, and we're managing their temperatures instead of managing the infection.
So obviously within that, it's like it's trying to put a plaster on it, in terms of that. And then, am I right in thinking that then there are courses or nurses or systems within the NHS then that can help people when they're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they're prescribed metformin, and unfortunately, when you get to insulin and you get prescribed insulin for type 2 diabetes, is it a bit too late or not? Or
I mean, if it's early days, you can get off it.
Yeah.
The further you go on down that journey of type 2 diabetes, the islet cells that make your insulin, they just don't make it anymore, so you effectively become a type 1 diabetic to some degree. There are courses and there are people that can support you on this.
Diabetes nurses and stuff like that?
There are diabetes nurses. There's something called the expert course. What I've also found in medicine is that we're quite dogmatic. We like to do the things that we've always done. It's only recently that nutritional interventions like a low-carb diet, which are super helpful for type 2 diabetes, have been thought not to be madness. Yeah. I, about 4 or 5 years ago, made a sheet about low-carb diets for my type 2 diabetics. And I got an email from some of the dietitians suggesting that there was a GP in the community that was prescribing life-threatening advice.
Oh, wow.
And if you came across any of this advice, to throw it away. Look, that was tough for me. Telling people not to eat Weetabix.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's life-threatening, really, but...
Start of the end?
Say again.
Is it start of the end, that?
Start of the end of what?
Start of the end of the change, as in, does that make sense?
No.
So in terms of where you're at with general practice now.
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense?
Well, that was a number of years ago.
Right.
General practice, look, it's an amazing job. You're involved in people's lives from birth to the end, but it's a tough gig.
Yeah.
It's a tough gig. And I want to make a difference in a different way now, so...
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, so it is the end. I'm stopping. I'm stopping that line of work. After
we'll come on to that in a second. Again, it's just sort of everything leads up in regards to that. It's very part of the reason for, as I said, it's really interesting to know that we have someone with your story within the community, how CrossFit, training and the people at Dragon have helped you along that way in terms of, transforming your health, transforming, things outside of the gym. Because that's, there's a good thing in sort of saying is that what we see is that how hard people work in here, we generally think that's a fair reflection on how people operate outside of the gym.
Yeah.
And then that high intensity, that succumbing and being vulnerable to working hard, prepares people in regards to greater levels of resilience, okay, outside the gym, you know. So it's interesting to sort of see your trajectory and how the positive effect that it's had on you, which sort of mirrors the positive effect CrossFit has had on my my sort of life. And it's sometimes I guess what I'm trying to say is that you have to just got to let it happen. Does that make sense? It's because you know, at the end of the day, if you like training hard and you like working out, and you know, you focus and you put that into your diary and you make it a little thing, then everything else outside, whether it's work, whether it's stuff that you want to do, just seems a little bit easier in that journey, you know, just because you've prepared to put work in.
Yeah, I mean, it can change your mindset. You have to be open for that, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big one, you know, and we sort of see that now. I mean, specifically with new people, because it is a bit weird. Everyone's a bit like, everyone knows everyone's name here. You know, what we see when we talk to people when they're coming in through the door, it's a bit like, so we want to know what your business is. Not in a direct one, but we want to know what it is that you're working on, where you want to go, you know, that kind of thing, because it just allows us then to help you on that journey, because that's the big thing, you know. Is that what I want to say, you know, you are a prime example of what training or CrossFit or, you know, just focusing in on your fitness and your health does. You know, it's another shining example, you know. So so coming back to your journey then. So you've come in, you've seen it, you've stuck at it. You doing a mixture of classes and online now, or where are you at with your training at this moment?
Yeah, so things changed during the pandemic, obviously. Things have changed me. I'm doing a lot more online classes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm never going to stop doing this. Time-wise, it's really helpful for me to be able to sort of do something in my own home. And the way that Dragon have changed their sort of offerings has really allowed people to stay consistent. Look, things change in your life, right? I used to train 5 times a week, and now I might train here twice a week. But I don't think I'll ever stop training. And that's the most important thing. Yeah. And what I've learned mostly from you and your coaches is how I can maintain that at home, even if I don't have access to you anymore, you know, wherever I go. Thankfully, there are CrossFit gyms all over the world. So.
Yeah. Have you been to any other CrossFit gyms on your travels? Like, I mean, is that something you would have done in the past when you went on holiday, is go and train somewhere?
No. Yeah. It's madness, isn't it? Yeah. So my goal was always to get to San Francisco CrossFit. Yeah. I never got there. Kelly Starrett. Yeah. Now it's gone, unfortunately. Yeah. But I've trained in CrossFit gyms in sort of New Zealand. Yeah. Wherever we go on holiday. And look, even if we don't manage to hit up a gym, we do a CrossFit style workout. Yeah. The biggest thing I think CrossFit brought to me was understanding that muscle mass was such an important thing in aging and in the management of metabolic disease. So it's rare that I do something that's just cardio now, which is all I did before. Yeah. And unfortunately, that doesn't sort of
float your boat anymore.
It doesn't, but also it doesn't help me with the things that, look, I'm of a Southeast Asian origin. The likelihood of me developing type 2 diabetes is higher than it is for you.
Is that just a genetic thing?
So there's a relationship, I think, between your personal fat threshold and your development of type 2 diabetes. So when you run out of space to store extra energy under your skin, you start to store it around your organs and in your organs, and that's when your blood sugar levels and your insulin levels start to go skewy. So
and that's visceral fat, is that right?
That's visceral fat, yeah. So there's some evidence that Southeast Asian people have a lower personal fat threshold. Yeah. So you see a lot of Southeast Asians with type 2 diabetes with normal weight.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's probably more visceral fat. So, so that's something that's always in my mind. So, trying to put some muscle mass on. Also, because you don't want to fall over when you're
No.
70 and break your hip.
No, definitely, and that's a bit, you know, that's a big one, you know. So, you know, everyone knows of Michael that trains here. You know, he started at 72, and you know, he won't mind me saying, and you know, we noticed and we spoke about it yesterday, right? Now he's 84, right? So he's been doing this for 12 years, and there's, you know, we can even notice a little bit of a decline now, all right? What some of the stuff that he can do, but he's still moving forward, and I think that's the important thing, is that what would that decline be like had he not done anything at all? And I think this is where, I guess, you know, you are the expert on this, because everyone sees the fit, you know, training in a gym, maybe a selfish act, or, you know, everyone's doing it for aesthetics and all this kind of stuff. When realistically, isn't one of the other parts of like, I'm going to put it into simple terms. You're basically less likely to die early the more muscle mass you have. Is that right? That's one of the biggest key criterias in terms of longevity, is the amount of muscle mass that someone can actually keep. Is that correct?
Yeah. You need it to shove extra glucose into, so that's not in running around your bloodstream. You need it to be able to walk and move and get yourself out of bed.
Yeah.
So if you want to be 80 years old, carrying your own shopping home, what do you need to be doing age 30 to know that you're going to be able to do that age 80? So you need to kind of work backwards. So if I want to be able to haul my body weight off the floor, which is about 65 kilos at the moment, when I'm 75 years old, how much do I need to be able to pick up off the floor age 44?
Yeah.
It's probably more than you think it is.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's me mitigating those problems in the future, I hope.
So what sort of stuff are you doing then with this, you know, this knowledge, with where you want to be physically, you know, at that age, same as me, you know, I want to be able to be taking my grandkids around, you know, on a motorbike, maybe. I doubt that, but like, you know what I mean? Or granddad's looking after us today, so that means we're going to get absolutely run around ragged everywhere. You know, that's the sort of thing that I'm looking for. What kind of steps can people do? I mean, obviously we've mentioned about the nutrition, you know, in a little bit detail. We understand where it's at. What sort of like key tips nutritionally do you think, you know, you have been offering, you know, some of your patients, etc., just to try and get them working towards that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of key things: protein-led, nutrient-dense whole foods.
Cool. What do you say to someone who says, well, what I should do, let's ask the next question. So protein from where?
So protein from wherever you want to get it from. Ideally, I would suggest that animal protein is a good place to start, but if you have ethical or moral reasons not to do that, you still really need to focus on. And you need to be focused on the amount of leucine that you're getting so you can spark that muscle growth. Plant protein's great. You might have to get them from different... You don't get all of the essential proteins in plant protein, so you need to be aware of that. But you really need to be getting, I mean, I would say at least between 1 gram and 1.5 grams per kilo, really, of body weight. Yeah,
and that's what we find as well when we do a lot of like nutritional analysis of people. They're nowhere near that.
No, it's hard.
It's hard. And as you said, I know it was a very leading question, the protein one, right? Because obviously I kind of sit within the camp, which is very much pro-meat or pro-animal product. And because of the things which you said, like leucine, all right, essential amino acid, you know, it's not really abundant within plant proteins, so you have to supplement from it. And then my argument with supplements is, well, if you actually have to supplement, it's probably not the way in which we should be eating. But as you said, for ethical and personal moral reasons, if that's the case, just supplement as best you can.
You have to be aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think knowledge is the big one, right? So we've got protein, adequate protein. What other things?
So nutrient density. Look, our bodies need fuel, but that's not all they need. They need minerals and vitamins, and you need those mitochondria that make energy to be working well. So for that, you need B vitamins, you need magnesium, and you get those best in whole foods. Again, meat, really good sort of resource for that. Eating isn't just about weight.
No.
Right? So you can be
Gotta
the weight
enjoy
that
it
you
as
want to
well.
be. You can have the muscles that you want to have, however you've got them. But if you don't have the nutrition in you, then you can still feel pretty shit.
Yeah, that massively. So in terms of, the whole food diet, sometimes I find, and again, the reason why I want to lean on your experience here is because, I know you've done a lot of reading on it. You sometimes see within the fitness industry, and it is the fitness industry, it's not the health industry, people saying you can eat what you want, as long as you're in a calorie deficit, it's going to have a positive effect on weight, and weight is the be all and end all. So, what's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
There are certain fitness experts out there that really just push the calorie deficit. And look, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
We should be thinking about losing fat, not just weight.
Yeah.
It's very easy to lose muscle mass just in a calorie deficit. But again, we're not talking about nutrition then. All these things, all these chemical reactions, like you did chemistry as a degree, right? All of these...
Long time ago,
not that long. We need these vitamins and minerals for our bodies to work properly. And you don't get them from being in a calorie deficit of...
Cocoa Pops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If people knew why Mr. Kellogg made cereals in the first place, they wouldn't be eating them today.
I actually shared an article the other day. So, the thing is, Mr. Kellogg created a nutritious, it's not dense, what's the opposite? Like devoid of any nutritional derailed breakfast to stop people wanking. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's
basically it. Yeah. So to limit their...
Because it was partly...
Sexual
devil worship or something like that. Yeah, something like that. Crazy.
Yeah, he was based in some sort of religion, I think there. And look, again, these foods are flipping delicious. We have to remember that ultra-processed food has been designed for us to want to keep eating it and go out and buy it again and again and again.
Yeah.
So it's really hard on an ultra-processed food diet to lose weight, because you really have to employ willpower to do that.
Well, that's interesting.
That's finite.
Because, as you said, from your perspective, you can give people the prescription, and you have done, with some of your patients, etc. With that willpower thing, then, what sort of things do you think helps people try and stay or try and keep to, a healthier diet?
So you have to first recognize what people are sort of the kinds of foods that they're willing to eat. So if you're vegetarian and vegan, just telling somebody to eat, go on a carnivore-ish diet it's not going to help. It's not going to work.
They're just going to, it
doesn't matter what I think. With regards to weight loss, the issue is feeling hungry all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So protein, whole foods, not eating ultra-processed foods. You don't end up needing willpower because you are full. Protein and fiber are the things that fill you up. Filling yourself up just simply on fiber isn't a good idea, because you're not getting the nutrient density that you need, and you're not getting the protein that you need.
Plus, you're sitting on the toilet quite often.
Yeah. Or, super constipated. Some people don't do that well on fiber either.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so some people who are having problems, I'm like, your stools are too bulky, babe.
Yeah.
Eat less kale. Yeah.
Yeah, and plus their plumbing bills are probably...
Liver is the superfood, Andy, not kale. That's what I would say.
I've just recently started to get... I had a hat tip for this website called The Ethical Butcher, and there's a steak mince which they've put liver and heart into.
Amazing.
So, it's flavoursome.
I've been thinking about developing that. There's somebody out there who already does it in this country.
Yeah, Ethical Butcher. I've got no affiliation with them.
I'll check them out.
But so they do that. Again, obviously it's an acquired taste, but I think it's a taste that we kind of lose. I'll give it to Erica and Elodie's just starting to experiment with food, etc. So this is my two youngest, and Erica just eats that stuff. She loves it.
Great.
Yeah, Emily not so much. Who's my eldest. So it's it is interesting. So all right, we've got that in terms of going there. We've got the willpower, and the thing is that what we find here is that when we prescribe people the nutrition strategies, we're a little bit more flexible. And the only reason being is that because what we're trying to do is create good habits and willpower. However, on the sort of feedback that we get, people know what they need to eat.
Yeah.
But they massively struggle to do that. And then it's almost an interesting thing in terms of like when you're on it and then when I'm on it, we can keep ourselves on that course. But it is hard, you know, in terms of just, trying to do that. But what I have found, and I don't know if it was the same with you, if you had a patient that was coming in quite regularly and, you know, so on and forth, or maybe even your own sort of feelings on it, the more knowledge people have about nutrition, the easier it becomes. So we've got someone who's come in and they just look at the calories first, they look at the protein, and then they're like, I can eat that, you know, and it's just been an ongoing process. It hasn't been something that's been overnight. It's been like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And that 6 month mark, bang, everyone just starts going in the right direction. Does that...
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I find consistency relatively easy. I think it's built into our DNA. Yeah. I think it is. I'm aware that not everybody's like that. Calorie counting for me, I did it for many years, unhelpful. In the end, probably sort of honing in on protein and making sure I was hitting that target meant that I was not feeling hungry. So I was falling into potentially a calorie deficit anyway if I wanted to lose weight. So I do find that the most helpful thing. And to be honest, from a longevity and health span perspective, we can't. Yeah, we have to focus on.
So how then, flipping around then, so with the Resilience Health, which is your own private business, how do you focus in on nutrition? How are you helping your clients, etc., with that?
So essentially what I'm trying to do is really see people from a whole body perspective, connecting your physical, your psychological and spiritual health all together. Because if we address those things, the longevity in what you're doing happens as well, habit building. So essentially what I do is see people who either want to sort of turn around their health. Look, there's loads of advanced testing that we can do that doesn't really exist on the NHS because there isn't a budget for it.
Yeah.
That is stuff that I think is really important.
Yeah.
So...
what sort of tests?
So, there's loads of different tests. So, you know, with regards to nutrition, we've really poo-pooed sort of vitamin testing and there's sort of in-depth testing for that. There's advanced lipid testing. Yeah. I recently did a 23andMe.
Okay, yeah.
And I got, you know, quite interesting sort of genetic results with regards to 2% Scandinavian, which is interesting. Don't know where that came from. But actually, there's a plethora of data that comes with that genetic testing. And if you know what to look for and how to use it, you can look at your genetic capabilities of processing caffeine or how well you absorb folate to methylate. Some of the methylation is something that has to happen all the time during a body to turn genes on and off and that sort of stuff. So I recently found out that I didn't methylate very well, that I've got a SNP on my MTFHR gene, so I'm really a big tracker. I track on my phone, I track with an Oura ring, and I just couldn't get my deep sleep to come up, and I couldn't consistently get a consistent HRV. Okay. And I was like, why? Because I really optimize for all the stuff we talked about. And then I did this testing, and then I realized that I probably needed more folate than I was eating. And I started a little folate lozenge, and for the last 2 weeks, my HRV has been consistent.
Oh, wicked.
And my deep sleep has increased. And look, in medicine, we talked about dogma. That's not stuff that we do.
No.
And often in medicine, stuff that we don't know or we don't understand, we poo-poo it.
Yeah.
So that kind of testing. And then I just advocate, look, those foundations, so, I get people to train with somebody who knows about training. I don't train them myself. I also have realized that there are outliers, so athletes are outliers. So I've done a lot of sort of reading and training and courses in how I can help athletes understand their blood work better. Like you said, look, if it fits your macros has been a big thing in the CrossFit community for a long time. And I think you can be of a good body weight and have muscle mass, but potentially still be metabolically unhealthy. And that's a big deal. You can't always fuel on jelly babies and get away with it for the rest of your life. Some people can.
I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, the 23andMe thing, really interests me. I've done it. So I've got a little bank of my data in there. And at one point, I was 70% more Neanderthal than most people. And then all of a sudden, more people have come on and mass gone down. And obviously, the way in which they do it, obviously, the more blood samples that they get, the better the data points, etc. But I like the way in which you've started to link everything up in terms of like, why is my HRV doing this and what have you. And I guess that's where, your speciality lies, because but being able to see someone's blood gives a great understanding of that individual's health at that current point.
Yes.
So what kind of things, for example, are you looking for in the blood? Let's say, what's the one at HPC1? What's that
HbA1c?
one? Yeah, what is that now?
So your HbA1c is an average blood sugar level over the course of 3 months.
Yeah.
They measure what we call glycolated hemoglobin. So that can be a bit iffy, because if you have something like thalassemia, your hemoglobin is different anyway. So your HbA1c can be, it's not a great marker of your metabolic health.
It's not, right?
No,
okay.
I would suggest. I mean, a fasting glucose, a glucose level after eating is helpful. And with the advent of CGMs, continuous glucose monitors.
Those are the funny little things that you see athletes wearing on their arms, or people who've got diabetes. You know? So we've both had a good play around with that.
Yeah. So you can see your responses to different foods. I mean, you want there's no problem with your sugar levels rising after you eat, that's normal, but how long they stay risen for and how long it takes to come back down and how high those levels go, that's important information, which you can do with something called an oral glucose tolerance test. We don't do those very often in practice.
No.
We get a fasting glucose level. We don't do insulin levels on the NHS. Be interesting to know how much insulin you need to keep your blood sugar level normal. Mm-hmm. Remember, your blood sugar level being abnormal is the last thing that happens. Yeah. If I looked at your CGM data and I saw it was taking a really long time for those sugar levels to come down, I would say, Andy, in the next 10 years, you're going to be a type 2 diabetic. Mm-hmm. We need to do something about this. There are other tests that are really helpful with regards to sort of insulin sensitivity. So looking at people's lipid profiles, their cholesterol tests.
So with these bank of tests then, like from your perspective in terms of the business element, so I come in as a client, I'm like, Rini, help me. I just want to have a proper look underneath the bonnet. What do I need to do? What tests are you going to give me?
So honestly, sometimes you can just bring me tests that you've already had done, and we can look at those and decide if you need more advanced testing. But I would want to see what your sugar management's like, so what your fasting glucose is like. I'd like to see your cholesterol tests. I'd like to see your liver function. I'd like to see your full blood count. I'd like to see... What else would I like to see? I mean, some hormonal tests, so your thyroid function, testosterone, all of that sort of stuff. And moving on from that, we can then decide whether there's some more advanced testing will be helpful, especially with regards to sort of glucose management and lipid management.
So if we do the first bank of tests and everything seems to be okay or within ranges, would the next step be trying to maximize or trying to improve those ranges? Does that make sense? Because I'd imagine there may be one or two things that, as a testing protocol might be. But what would what's the first thing that you try and navigate? If I've got normal glucose, I'm not displaying anything. I think, what am I? I'm coming nearly 40, so my hormonal levels will be in normal range. What sort of things what would be the first recommendation?
Well, it depends what you want, isn't it? So if you come in with these normal blood tests, you want to be awesome, but you don't feel awesome.
That's right.
We have to decide, is the information we're getting from those tests as helpful as it could be? Like I said, your glucose could be normal, but are you producing significant amounts of insulin to keep it there? And if you are, that's a problem. We need to do those kind of tests. You have to remember that reference ranges for medical tests are population-based. Yep. So a normal liver function reference range 50 years ago has been moved up now. So what is normal, in my eyes, isn't
abnormal. So is it because when we talk about nutrition on the level 1, we talk about well, I shouldn't say nutrition, but it's part parcel. But we've got this health fitness continuum, okay? And we say like that averages, right? So for wellness is 120 over 80 for blood pressure. Is that still the case? Or would that now be, well, it's actually worse than that now because of the averages, resting heart rate, that kind of stuff?
I mean, blood pressure to be diagnosed with hypertension is higher than that.
Yeah.
It's like 140.
Yeah.
But for me, I want to see it lower.
Yeah.
All of those reference ranges that are set that we sort of adhere to in the NHS are a little higher than I would want to see.
Okay. And has that been just a natural progress because of the average has been going up?
Yeah, because people are getting iller.
Got you. Spot on, right? So coming back to the testing protocol then, we'll probably talk a bit more about it on another one because there's lots of facets, right? So we've got the nutrition protocol in terms of what you'd recommend to try and bring those levels back up, try and reduce the impact of insulin and that kind of stuff. Also, sleep is a big thing which you like to look and quantify and track, same as me.
Yeah.
Because we spend a third of our life doing it. So what sort of diagnostics would you look at that?
That's a tougher one. So, you can take sort of information from how somebody feels when they wake up, but it's really handy to wear a ring like an Oura ring to get an idea of the different types of sleep that you're getting. Even if you're not tracking, there are things that will significantly impact you, your caffeine intake, how close you eat, the temperature of your bedroom, that we can change without knowing what your information is, and then seeing how you feel on the other side of that, right? So I don't process caffeine very quickly. I found that out from my 23andMe test, which means I limit my caffeine intake. Okay. You might not need to. You might be able to drink an espresso before bed. No. That's a genetic thing. Yeah. Until you don't do it, you don't know. Yeah. I've never actually given up caffeine, though, so that's something that you've done. I understand it doesn't feel good.
I used when I was playing. I probably gave it up for like 3 days. But when you've got pump coffee on tap, it's kind of hard. I definitely don't drink caffeine past then. But I guess where I'm coming from with a lot of this is that everyone is an individual and everyone does things differently. Yeah. And it's the question of, I guess, the quest to find out what works for you, and obviously base it on the results that you want, etc. I talk to people about sleep, and I guess, some of the people that I talk to in terms of clients, etc., they look at me stupid when I'm like, probably need to go to bed earlier. They're like, well, I can't. Okay, no worries. Let's talk about sleep hygiene. Yeah. Do you have a TV in your room? Yes, I do. Yeah. I'm like, well, I wouldn't if I was you. Because one, there's the temptation, and then two, obviously, to stay up later. Everyone gets drawn into the Netflix scenario. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the reasons for me not wanting them on there are a little bit woo-woo. And what I mean is like you've got EMFs, you've got all this kind of stuff, and it interferes with you. But again,
I turn my wife off at night.
You've gone down that one, right? Well, we can talk about that again. But I remember having the conversation in terms of Bluetooth headphones, and I'm like, it's like, that stuff's right next to your brain. Yeah, we've got it on a switch now, so it turns off at 9 p.m. Right, okay. Though I was at a meeting online the other day, and it just cut off, so that wasn't great. All right, okay, I like that. Yeah, that's
because I forgot about it.
That was pretty fun. All right, so sleep is something that you definitely look at.
Sleep,
nutrition.
Look, hormone production, how you manage your blood sugars, how you feel, the decision making. You talk about willpower. I want people to rely less on willpower because I think it's hard. Yeah. But all of those things are changed by sleep. So, looking at emails before you go to bed, the
stress,
blue light, all of that. Yeah. All of it.
Okay. So, what are your super tips? What have you found has worked the best for you to, I guess, when you feel the fittest, the healthiest, the happiest, over the last 10 years? What are the key things which you think, bang, this is when this is on, I'm on. When this is down, that's when I'm down. What sort of things have you noticed? Like some takeaway bits for the first podcast.
So the routine that I have settled on for me that works best is I'm first of all getting my sleep under control with those things, which means I wake up early, 5:30.
Banging.
I go and brush my teeth, drink some water, I do some breath work.
Yeah.
And then I do 10 minutes of mindfulness meditation.
Okay.
Then I get up and go and have my coffee.
Yeah.
In the winter, I have it in front of a light
Okay.
box.
Yeah.
I find that helpful.
Yeah.
Helps with my mood as well.
Yeah.
I prefer to train in the mornings if
Yeah.
possible. It just works out better for me. A huge impact in my life is my work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if that is incredibly stressful or overwhelming, that can be difficult. But I found that this routine for me helps mitigate that.
Yeah.
And also, it's set me up for being in a place where I feel courageous enough to move away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what works for me.
So I mean, that's awesome. So that's definitely when you're on it. Any thoughts on what you want to do?
What do you mean?
Well, as you said you move away from it. Is there some, with Resilience Health, as you can see, if you get the right people, you're going to get some great, results.
Yeah.
And it's what it's like. Are you looking forward just to sort of going full into that, or?
I really think I'm good at medicine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to say that out loud, and I probably wasn't prior, 10 years ago. So I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to do that in this way. But trying to develop that thing is quite hard. The NHS kind of institutionalizes you a little bit with regards to what you're capable of.
Yeah.
So I'm reaching for that, and I want to do that, but also in the perspective, like I said, of being able to help people who are athletes, whose blood work or their needs are slightly different. I think I'm capable of in that sort of realm as well. So Resilience Health.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And what we've decided between Rini and myself is that we're going to do some regular podcasts on certain bits and pieces. I mean, today's been a bit of an overarching one about your background, where you are and where you're getting to. I mean, as we can say, we've mentioned nutrition, we've mentioned sleep, but what we will do is that we'll just start to dig into those things in a bit more detail, leaning on your expertise and just some of the things in which I've noticed with the people that we have coming into the gym, the questions that I'm getting, because I think, you're obviously a better person to answer them than myself. So sounds pretty cool. All right. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your story, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks, And.
Nice one. Cheers, Rini.
Cheers.